Howdy, everyone. It's Austin and Cole with another episode of the Full Subjects podcast. Thanks for joining us again. Today, last stats package of the year came out. So November stats, we're going to be breaking those down, talking about what's going on in the market, kind of putting a bow on the stats episodes for the year, which is awesome. So thanks for joining us for another episode. As always, a friendly reminder to subscribe if you're not already subscribed and leave us a 5-star review. We really do appreciate that. And then one last thing as well. I just want to remind you guys, this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute any legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. And of course, it's not intended to cause or induce breach of any existing agency agreement. Sweet. Welcome back to the show, guys. Austin joining in for our last stats episode of the year. As we always joke about, Cole drives the bus on these ones. So, Cole, let's get right into it. Let's talk November stats package.
November stats. I wouldn't be, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't talk about some other things first. So, another Bank of Canada announcement. We saw another massive rate cut, which I think it wasn't a surprise leading right up to it. So in those last few days, we got some more information, specifically unemployment rate and kind of how the Canadian economy was doing. And that really shifted things because we were seeing a really high likelihood of another quarter point. And bang, bing, bang, boom, we saw a massive half point rate cut. So we're now 1.75% down over the year, which is quite significant. Most people are predicting we'll see another 1%, maybe 0.75 of a percentage point change by like middle of next year, which again is still quite significant. So yeah, rates are falling on the variable side. Fixed rates, we're not seeing a lot of change right now. Things are pretty steady. One more big thing I want to talk about though, Austin, before we jump right into stats, our big change happens on December 15th. So December 15th, two really key things come into effect. So first-time homebuyers originally could get a 30-year mortgage for a newly built properties only. That's now extending to existing properties. So that's huge news for anybody looking to get into their first home, because what it means is you can not only qualify for more, but you can also lower your payments if you'd like to. So really, really important thing for people to note. The other big one is that 30-year mortgages are also extending to everybody purchasing newly built homes. So if you already own, you can still get a newly built home and you can still extend that mortgage. Awesome, because again, brings your payments down, helps you qualify. I think that one right there may help with some of the problems we're seeing right now on people completing on condos. Austin, I think you and I talked about this in an earlier episode. I do think that's going to have an impact, that one there. And then last thing, do you want to jump in on that one quickly, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah. So the changing for people getting into the newly built condos, all of a sudden there's less of a kind of down payment requirement for them to get in, which is, again, just, by extending that AM, it just makes it just that little bit easier, and maybe they can get into something just, whether that's a little bit bigger, or maybe they can just get into the market, and it just helps their payment just to get into the market. I think it's going to be a huge change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great for anybody looking to enter. The other big one is insured mortgages, the price cap. So previously you used to only be able to purchase up to $1 million. That's now up to $1.5 million. Now that is very significant because it now means that you can purchase something up to $1.5 million with only $125,000 down. Austin and I have talked about this before. As much as that sounds great on paper, you still have about almost a $1.4 million mortgage. The payments on that are still quite significant. At just looking at it at that level, it's not really going to make a big difference, but there are certain people that their income may not be, they're self-employed individuals, and the way that they show their income can make it challenging for them to qualify sometimes. This is where I think this particular change is really going to matter. And it's also going to matter, I think, Austin, we've talked about this too, just above that $1 million price.
Yeah, that's going to be I think that's going to be the big kicker for a lot of people getting over $1 million. It's or $1 million purchase price. I guess I should say that a little bit more formally.
Yeah.
It's that 20% of equity. So a lot of, you might not have that 200 grand to put down, but you feel comfortable with the payment, and that's kind of the limiting factor. So yeah, I think what that's going to change more than anything else is maybe people getting into that 1.1 range, maybe 1.15. If you want to get crazy, maybe 1.2. I would be very surprised if people have 120 basically to put down, which would be the requirement on a 1.5 purchase if that's the route that you were going. And basically taking on a 1.3 or 1.4 $1.4 million mortgage. That seems like a lot to take on. So yeah, that's where I think it's going to affect people more.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be good for those people, like you said. Let's say you have 200 down and your limit originally would have been $1 million, because anything over that you wouldn't have been able to. But now, like you said, maybe you can push to 1.112 with only 200 down, and you can still service that $900 to $1 million mortgage because you have the income to do so.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunities there. I think it's going to be good. I'm curious to see if we see more changes. And the big one I'm going to talk about here before we jump into stats is what people in like mortgage broker space, or like more so in our world, would call an insurable mortgage. And that basically means a mortgage that could have insurance on it, but doesn't necessarily have insurance on it because it has more than a 20% down payment. So I'm curious to see if they're going to extend that from $1 million to $1.5 million, because those things right there would be massive, especially in places like Vancouver and Toronto, because now you have people that do have 20% down, could get insurance if they wanted to, though, because of the fact that the price point is under 1.5 million, but they don't have to, and because of that they get better rates. And that's what really comes down to that. Insurable price point insurable price point from a rate perspective tends to be more favorable. So I am really curious to see if they'll extend that. But anyways, let's jump into it. As always, we like to start things off with listings, so let's talk about it. New listings, they dropped 26% in 2024, or in November 2024, compared to October, which at the onset you might think, holy crap, 25% less new listings in November. Why do you think that is, Austin?
Do I just go default answer real estate calendar? No.
That's an easy answer.
I think a lot of people were probably thinking, if they were planning on moving in the fall or listing, I think they would be thinking about doing that earlier. You'd probably be on the market for September, October. So I think a lot of that inventory was already out there. On top of that, we have seen listings in general being, higher than normal inventory wise. So I think there's just a lot out there. So maybe there's not as much to list as cliche as that sounds. So I think it's kind of a combination of both.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So let's jump to active listings. Active listings also were down 8% month over month. Year over year, we're up quite significantly at 34%. And then another stat I'll throw at you: inventory remains at a 10-year seasonal high. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, speaks more to kind of the calendar, and about 30% above 2023, November of 2023. So year over year, we're still 30%. Total inventory is much higher. I think there's one major thing that jumps out to me here. It's the fact that listings are going down, which makes me think the next thing we're talking about, transaction sales, are going up, which we did see. I think I might have made a mistake here on my my notes package here, but I know that they did go up, and I think that's, I want to say it's do you know if it's 2 months in a row now that they went up in the Fraser Valley? You might actually have a better idea of that.
Let me just pull it up right now.
Yeah.
Drag the puck a little bit for me. You're talking HBI price, correct?
No, transactions, like just if we're seeing more sales. Yeah. Sorry,
sales.
But overall, we are still seeing a sales to active listing ratio right in that middle ground, 14%. So still in a balanced market. Go ahead, Austin.
Sorry. So all price ranges sales peaked in October and then down a little bit in November.
Okay. So they did come down a little bit. Yeah. But that's not a bad thing, because October was a little bit higher than we had seen before. Yeah. So down 15% from October, but 28% year over year increase. So looks like I did have that right. I thought I just had a bit of a blunder there.
Slight decrease, but I think, what I kind of felt, September slow for sure, especially coming out of the summer, a little bit quieter. A lot of the listings that we had, or that I had in buyers that I was working with, I feel like they finally decided to do something in October. There were still some people kind of kicking around in November. And then right now, there's a handful of people that are looking to do something over the next week, 10 days. A couple active offers right now, a couple new listings. So yeah, just seeing kind of if we get a bite, if they're in a position where, some people do wait for the new year, and some people now will say, well, if I'm going to sell anyway, I might as well see if we get a bite in December. And then if not, we can, cancel, relist, or be fresh in January. So that's a strategy or a conversation we'll have with people for sure.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that transactions going down in December, which we'll recap when we get back together in January, is not out of the expectation here. I think it's very likely that we'll see December transactions go down. Maybe not. It's just sometimes we've talked about this before. It just depends on, I can't remember how you explain this, but it has to do with when the actual transaction closes, or does it have to do with when the transaction is actually like
subject removal? So when it's firm, removal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that may just impact when we see transactions actually show up in the stats too. So that's something that's worth noting. So yeah, I mentioned sales to active listings ratio. It's right in that middle ground. We're still seeing what we call a balanced market. Let's jump into prices, and then we'll talk about days on market to this time, because it's gone up a bit, and I think it's worth noting. So benchmark prices down 0.2% overall, which the most significant thing about this is the 8th straight drop of overall prices in the Fraser Valley that we've seen. So what do you think that means? Do you think we'll see a 9th? Do you think December goes down a little bit as well? And where do you see us going in terms of pricing?
Yeah, I would definitely say that December we see a 9th slight drop. And the reason for that, again, is just simple supply and demand. Like people that do want to sell and kind of have that certainty in December so they can go shopping, they're probably just going to take what they can get, but just be realistic. Like, okay, if I have certainty now and I know what it is, in first couple of weeks of January, and I get to go shopping, and it's maybe not as busy as we can expect in a full-on spring market. People kind of have that certainty in that position. So yeah, that makes sense. And sorry, what was your second question? It was if we see a 9th.
Yeah, if we see a 9th, and where do you see stuff like prices going?
I personally see things maybe being a little bit more, I don't want to say flat, but I think we're going to have a pretty good idea. I see prices, especially in the early spring market, staying pretty flat. So some of the inventory that's out there that has been sitting on the market for a while, because like we just talked about, inventory is up. That stuff will still be kicking around. People that do want to make a move in the spring, those people will list. There'll also be those people that wanting to move that will eat up some of that inventory. So kind of like a neutral transaction, let's call it, a purchase and a sale. So that's, net even as far as like listings and sales. And yeah, I think there'll just be some stuff still kind of kicking around. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I see things generally for the first, like, let's say January, February being pretty flat. If it gets to the point where we see a lot more rate drops, or something else changes, could I see some upward pressure on prices? Yeah, because that's also typically what we see in the spring. A little bit more demand, a little bit more activity. Some of that inventory that's sitting starts to go, and the wheels start turning. But yeah, I would say December it'll go down, and then it will be very close to kind of November, December numbers in January.
Okay, I think that's a really good prediction. So two things I want to mention. So you mentioned future rate drops, and we talked about this at the start of the episode. So first announcement, January 29th. So we could see another rate drop then, and that could also help kind of transition the market or help push the market in a certain direction. The second thing you mentioned was that it's going to be flat. Now, flat isn't necessarily a bad thing, because flat can be like very minor changes, and we've seen very minor changes, even though we've seen 8 straight drops. It's not obviously flat, it's trending down. But flat isn't a bad thing. It means things are stabilizing. It means maybe you are seeing a little bit of an uptick here and there. That's kind of what I want to highlight from what you said, because we kind of more than likely are going to see it flatten out a little bit before we see it start to go up again. So as much as people that are trying to sell want to see prices go up and get back to a point where they've been in the past, flat's not a bad thing is what I'm trying to say. Unless you're considering talking about the earth, then that is a bad thing and you're crazy. So anyways, we won't get into that too much, but last thing I want to talk about here, days on market.
Losing all of our flat earth listeners. Thanks.
All the flat earthers have left. So actually, before I jump to days on market, one more thing about benchmark prices, which jumped out to me, was apartments were really hit the hardest for whatever reason in November. down over 1% month over month, and also down over 1% year over year, which those make sense because price points year over year for most things were about the same as they were now, which people go, okay, then how come it's been going down 8 times? Well, it went up a bit and then it came down. Yeah, so that one's quite a bit, 1% on the apartments, which I did want to talk a little bit about with you, because usually that's the asset class that is the lowest barrier to entry, of course, right? It's the lowest price point. Do you think it's just too much inventory and that's why we're seeing those prices go down?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm just pulling this up here right now on my stats package, monthly supply. Yeah, like over even just the last couple months, we've been sitting at like, between 5 and 6.5 months of supply of inventory. It's come down slightly. I wonder if there is a way to just like total supply listings, active listings. Yeah. Like we've seen in the Fraser Valley in September, there were 2,300 active condo listings, down slightly, 2,328 in September, 2,294. Now we're at 2,106. So yeah, I think it's a combination of maybe people thinking that they're not going to get the price and maybe they're going to just rent it out. Maybe some of that stuff is also just, getting eaten up and people are taking what they can get so they can get into that townhouse or something like that. I think it's a combination of a couple things.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. Let's jump to days on market. Now, these are averages. We've talked about averages and medians before, but we'll stick with averages here. So detached, you're now seeing over 6 weeks on average for a detached home to sit on the market. Townhouses are just under 5 weeks, and then apartments are actually more than townhouses at over 5 weeks. So the townhouse thing doesn't really surprise me that it's the quickest to sell, I guess, because I think that's the asset class that is the most, I don't know, maybe you can attest to this, more demand because it's people moving up from the apartments to the townhouses. Typically a townhouse is suitable for a family, so maybe that is the first home people are buying. The detached price point isn't easy for most people to get into unless they've already started to work their way up. Does that surprise you at all, any of those?
No, I hate to just agree with everything you're saying because it doesn't make for good discussion, but I think you nailed it there.
Yeah, no, I think we're gonna see things shift in the new year. I think we have to manage people's expectations a little bit from the selling point. What would you tell buyers, or sorry, what would you tell sellers to kind of expect going into even just the first half?
I think, do your homework, look at the comparables, and just be realistic with what you're thinking. Every once in a while, you can get that one buyer and that, maybe pays a bit of a premium for your place. And again, it depends on what it is. But yeah, just right now, because we've seen price be pretty flat, like pretty comparable for, I would say, the last 8 months. Like things have gone down slightly, but it's pretty predictable. Just do your homework and just be realistic with what you're thinking, and you can be successful in the move is kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it. I think we'll continue to bring you guys the facts and we'll continue to advise accordingly. And obviously we're available for more one-on-one information as well, but just, be realistic with your expectations, do the research, and just make sure you prepare yourself for what's to come, because there's no guarantees, but there's still lots of opportunities out there as well. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Like it. I think that's kind of great way to summarize the November stats, and great way to kind of wrap up the episode here. We've got a couple more coming for you for the rest of the year, so we'll be doing 2024 recap. That'll probably be a longer, juicier episode, just talking about all the crazy changes we've seen this year. There's been mortgage changes, legislation changes, tenancy changes. So it'd be great to kind of recap everything that we've seen in 2024. We'll also do our crystal ball episode. And with that too, we'll reflect on our predictions for the year and kind of make fun of ourselves probably a little bit, which is always fun. And then, coming up after that, we'll be into the new year. We're really excited to bring you guys some new stuff, a little bit of a different structure for the podcast, trying some different things, some innovation, which will be awesome. So yeah, Cole, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm looking forward to those episodes. I've already listened to the episode where we made our predictions, so I'm looking forward to shining some light on who was right, who was wrong, kind of where we fell on that.
Should we do a quick 1 minute teaser? What did you get from that episode? One thing that sticks out for me is we're not talking sports anymore, and that's probably for good reason.
Yeah, exactly. We've eliminated the sports segment of the show. I mean, let us know if you want to hear it again. We're open to it, but until we get some direct feedback that says otherwise, I think we'll stick with what we're doing.
So maybe one other thought. We started this over a year ago. We're at 72 episodes, which is wild to say out loud.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on us 72 episodes in?
I was hard to believe, honestly, when I started looking back at all the episodes, because what I did is I went back through all the notes and kind of checked through like what did we do in the last year, so for the recap, and I was like, wow,
a
when
lot.
you put out an episode every week, it adds up quickly, right? So I mean, we're gonna hit 100 this year, which will be a big deal for us. I don't want to talk too much about what's to come, but we're definitely expanding our avenues of getting this out to you guys and trying to market this a little bit more to make sure we're reaching as many people as we can and trying to help as many people as we can. I think next year is going to be a good year for us, not only from a business standpoint. I think the podcast is going to see some good growth as well. But yeah, looking forward to it. And as always open to ideas about topics, or if you want to be a guest, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to consider it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point. That's definitely something that we have talked about. We want to branch off more and get more, I would say, like related to real estate or business or economics, anything that kind of affects the world that we, or the realm that we work in. Definitely open to that. Real estate lawyers, notary. Love to get even another inspector or two on. There's so many great ones that we work with and have different perspectives and different ideas. So, that comes to mind. Fraser would be cool as well. Think about how they do things and what they do. I love some like real estate horror stories from a lawyer as well. I'm sure they wouldn't be able to name anything, but I'm sure they've had some pretty crazy stories, which would be fun. But yeah, awesome to see how far we have come, even, on the back end, some of the tech and some of the things that we're doing just to get the podcast and the media and the platform out to you guys in a, quite frankly, better way. Integrating technology, video was a big step for us. It sounds funny to say it like this, but yeah, just behind the scenes, being able to incorporate this, that we're able to post, and going to eventually get it on YouTube as well, and just make it overall better audio quality, editing, all of that stuff. It's been a lot of work and a lot of learning behind the scenes, but we're super proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and we're excited to bring you guys, I guess, season 2, because we've just had one season for 70 something episodes. So yeah, really excited for that, guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you next week.